a couple of minutes, and then we will finish with today's chitas. So we addressed elements of the Amida, the connection between Ga'al Yisrael, Geula, and Tefillah, why we go from the blessing Ga'al Yisrael right into the Amida. We talked about the significance of the personal petitions that we have for God in the Amida, but let's actually look into the Amida. We talked actually yesterday about the opening verse of the Amida. My Lord, open my mouth and my lips shall declare your praise. We talked about that. So let's actually take a look at the Amida. So the Amida was established by the members of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, the members of the Great Assembly. That was 120 sages who, this was something, a body of rabbis, of sages that spanned several generations, centuries. This started at the beginning of the Second Temple era. So Ezra, who led the Aliyah from Babylon back to Israel, back to Jerusalem to rebuild the Second Temple, he led it along with some prophets. So that was at the end of the exile between the two temple periods. So we're talking about 2,500 years ago. And Ezra and his court of 120 judges, they established the Amida. And so throughout the Second Temple, Jews were praying the Amida. But the Jews, many of them knew Hebrew, or at least it was more familiar to them at the time, and the Holy Tongue we're talking about. And so they prayed. And the established practice of the Amida, which is that constituted basically prayer. We pray 3 times a day. The prayer really constitutes just the Amida. That's the prayer of the day. And then we build other prayers around it, as we've been talking about and we'll continue to talk about. But the Amida prayers, so that was something that all Jews said 3 times a day. And it consisted of 18 blessings. Why 18 blessings? So there are different opinions in the Talmud why the sages established the Amida with 18 blessings. One reason is, we sing a Mizmor LeDavid, right? If you're familiar, on Friday night before Kabbalat Shabbat, Psalm 29, we sing Mizmor LeDavid, right? Mizmor LeDavid, Avola Hashem b'nei Elim. So that psalm has God's name 18 times, appears in that psalm. That's one opinion. Another opinion is that it's because of the 18 times God's mentioned in the Shema. Another opinion is that it's represents 18 of the vertebrae. And so these are the different opinions as to why 18. But if you look into the Amida, you'll notice that our Amida actually has, well, by the way, that's also why the Amida was 18 blessings, and that's why it's also called the Shmona Esrei. So it's called the Amida. Amida means to stand, or standing, because the prayer is recited standing. Because as we've said, we recite it standing as if we're standing in front of the king. We're standing before God. And before the king, you stand, you don't sit. So it's recited standing. But it's also called the Shmona Esrei. Shmona Esrei, of course, means 18. Shmona Esrei, that's 18. So it's also called the 18 because it has 18 blessings. But if you look into our Amida, you will notice that it doesn't have 18 blessings, it has 19 blessings. And that's because if you fast forward almost 400 and almost 500 years, you'll get to 420 years, maybe to be more precise, at the end of the Second Temple period. What was going on then was that Jerusalem and Israel were under Roman rule, and it was at that time already, sometime during the Second Temple period, the occupying powers in the land of Israel started to persecute Jews and started to ban religious practice. That was something that was new. So even though there was, even though Jews had been exiled, the first temple was destroyed, Jews had been exiled and been hounded, and there were wars and there were fights, but no occupying power or conquering power ever put laws in place to ban any Jewish practice. It was only really middle of the Second Temple period. It was really the story of Hanukkah was kind of the first time we encounter this idea that religious practice was starting to be banned and regulated by the foreign power. And what was going on is many Jews were starting to side with the Romans. The Romans, because this went through different powers during those last few centuries, so Jews started to desert the Jewish people and started to turn on their fellow Jews and started to report them to the governments. So you had a rise of heretical sects and heretical thinking among the Jews, and they were really causing big problems for those who were praying every day. And they were causing big problems, and so the sages instituted, Rabbi Gamliel, who was the head, the Nasi, the leader of the Jewish people at the time, instituted a 19th blessing. And that's the blessing of Olam Hashinim we'll get to eventually, where he basically prays for the downfall of all those who seek to deliberately and maliciously destroy the Jewish people. So that's why now we have 19 blessings, but the name 18 blessings stuck, Shmona Esrei. So we have the 18 blessings of the Amida. Tomorrow we'll get into the structure of the Amida, how it exactly is structured.